What if I told you the universe could be infinite and still have a boundary? Sounds contradictory, doesn't it? Since childhood, we've been taught that something can only be one thing or the other, finite or infinite, with an edge or without one, beginning or end. But the cosmos defies all those categories we use to make sense of the world. And this debate isn't just scientific, it touches our deepest beliefs about what it means to exist. If the universe has no edges, why do we insist on placing such rigid limits on our own lives? Most people believe everything needs a frame, a map with borders, a story with a beginning and conclusion, a space with walls. Yet the universe suggests that logic may be flawed. Space can be continuous, expanding endlessly, and still not require a physical boundary. It's a counterintuitive idea, but one that offers a powerful reward, realizing that many of our barriers are illusions, walls built by the mind rather than by reality. Understanding this is like opening a window where there once seemed to be only a wall. And here's the most intriguing part. When we connect with this cosmic paradox, we begin to see our own choices differently. We realize our limits don't have to be final, and that expansion doesn't require external permission, only the courage to take the next step. The universe is living proof that there are no fixed frames, only horizons that shift as we move forward. The real question is, are you willing to look beyond the obvious, to explore the invisible, and to discover what lies past the boundary everyone believes is the end? When we talk about the expansion of the universe, it's common to imagine an explosion spreading in all directions, as if there were some empty space out there waiting to be filled. But that's not the reality. What's growing is not something that invades an outside, because no such outside exists. What expands is the very structure of space itself, like the invisible fabric of reality being stretched from within, without relying on any external boundary. The closest analogy to understand this is a balloon being inflated. It's not the air inside that matters, but the surface expanding in all directions, revealing more space every second. Now imagine a tiny ant living only on that surface. For it, there's no outside at all, only a curved world that keeps growing without ever presenting a border or a wall to end its journey. Our universe could work the same way. A space that, while finite in volume, has no tangible edges, and in that very paradox lies a powerful lesson about expansion, challenging how we've been taught to think about limits, beginnings, and endings. This idea becomes even clearer when we recall simple personal experiences, like letting balloons go as children and watching until they vanished into the sky, almost as if swallowed by some distant nothing. It felt as though they were crossing an invisible threshold into another space, but in truth, they were only moving beyond our sight, fading away without ever hitting a wall or a final point. The universe works in much the same way. There's no cosmic wall marking the limit of its expansion, only a surface that keeps stretching endlessly, like the balloon inflating in all directions. The discomfort comes from the fact that the human mind is trained to think in boxes, frames, beginnings and ends, and anything beyond that feels too strange. Yet it's exactly in that discomfort that the opportunity lies, the chance to see reality differently, to accept that borders don't always exist, and that many are nothing more than constructions of our limited perception. And if this still feels distant from everyday life, think about how often we project the same kind of limits onto our own paths, believing there are invisible walls holding us back from chasing bigger dreams. How many times have you stopped yourself from trying something new, convinced that you couldn't go beyond a certain point, as if there were a barrier ahead? The universe teaches us that to expand is not to break through walls, but to step into spaces that were already there, simply waiting for us. Growth, in that sense, is nothing more than continuing to move, to explore, to allow yourself to exist beyond what once looked like the end. With each step, just like the little ant on the balloon, we discover there is no final boundary, only more space opening before us. Perhaps the greatest lesson is to accept that life, like the cosmos, may be finite in duration, but doesn't need to have rigid borders. And from that reflection rises a new, intriguing question. What if what we see as flat and limited is in truth only a small fragment of something far greater and far more curved than we can imagine? Looking at the sky can be deceiving. It feels like a flat, motionless canvas. That impression is born from our very limited point of view. Someone walking down a straight road swears everything is flat, but the ground follows Earth's gentle curvature, hidden from the eyes. The universe may trick us with a similar persistent illusion. We see just a tiny fragment and rush to conclusions about the whole. What looks flat could be only a slice of something larger and curved, like the surface of a sphere that up close seems perfectly straight. The mind loves to simplify the complex so it doesn't feel lost, but too much simplicity can turn into a very confident mistake. That's why we must be careful. Short perspective creates long certainties. Think of ordinary experiences that betray our perceptions so easily. Miles on a highway feel level, yet the globe beneath is curved. Curvature only becomes obvious once we climb high enough. A satellite photo changes everything. Flatness vanishes, the world appears. In the cosmos, our photos are still conceptually low altitude. We measure millions of light years and believe it's already the whole scale. It's like studying a single drop of water and claiming to know the ocean. A fragment is useful, but it doesn't grant a final verdict. Good science combines measurement with horizon-sized humility. Accepting the limits of sight is already a way of expanding vision. Perhaps flatness is nothing more than our zoom stuck too close. And this connects directly with the life you're living right now. How many decisions have you made by looking at only a tiny fragment? How many people have you judged without seeing the curve of context? When we widen the angle, new paths appear that never seemed to exist. The straight road reveals detours, turns, viewpoints, and horizons. Expanding perspective reshapes the map and changes our next step. Where once there seemed to be a wall, unexpected continuity emerges. The universe teaches us, partial is not total, no matter how convincing. Open the frame, and boundaries shift their place almost instantly. And speaking of wider frames, here's a playful parallel. Some of the most famous flat worlds live inside video games. Anyone who's spent hours in front of a video game knows the feeling of immersion. The world seems endless, full of places waiting to be explored. You walk, run, uncover new landscapes, and feel a total sense of freedom. But then, suddenly, you hit an invisible barrier that makes no sense. It's as if the world had transparent walls, silently controlling your path. Frustration sets in because it looked like there was no horizon at all. The looping mechanic in other games can be just as surprising. You leave one side and reappear on the other, as if in a curved space. That reveals something important. A limit can be just a rule of the system, not of the space itself. In the real universe, maybe we experience something similar without clearly noticing it. After all, how far can we really go without running into a wall? That same sensation exists outside the screen too. How many times have you believed you could move freely in any direction, and then suddenly you faced an invisible wall in your own life? It might have been a social rule, a limiting belief, or a fear. All of these act like transparent walls inside the mind, and we get frustrated when we realize freedom wasn't as complete as we thought. The looping shows up in repetitive patterns that never seem to end, cycles of choices that always lead us back to the same place. It feels like progress, but it's only repetition inside an invisible code. Games teach us that even freedom can have hidden rules. So isn't it possible the universe also hides codes like these? What's most fascinating is how games expose our relationship with limits. Hitting an invisible wall irritates us precisely because it makes no logical sense. And looping may provoke laughter, but also deep reflection. Perhaps cosmic space doesn't have an edge, but firm, internal rules. It could fold in on itself without ever revealing a wall. Just like in games, we may be living inside a larger system we can't see. We could be trapped in logics we don't consciously perceive. What we call infinite may just be repetition in disguise. And what we call a barrier may only be a rule we don't yet understand. Video games become a metaphor for both the cosmos and for life. And that metaphor opens the door to thinking about the great enigma of infinities. When we hear the word infinite, we immediately think of something without end. But in mathematics, infinity is not just a really huge size. There are different kinds and even different orders of infinity. The natural numbers, for example, form an infinite set. Yet between any two numbers, there are infinitely many hidden real numbers. That means some infinities are actually larger than other infinities. The idea sounds absurd, but it has been studied and accepted for centuries. Mathematician Georg Cantor revealed that there are hierarchies of infinities. So infinity is not a simple concept, but a logical structure. It's not only about size, it's about forms of organization. And that logic helps us think beyond the obvious and the intuitive. A practical example makes this easier to visualize. Imagine counting numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, on and on forever. There will always be a next, and it will never be possible to finish. But if you look just between 0 and 1, there are infinite fractions. 1/2, 1/4, 1/8, 1/16, and so on. No matter how much you divide, there's always room for one more value. This infinity within is denser than the infinity we can count. In other words, some infinities contain other infinities inside them. This difference reveals a kind of mathematics that is strange yet poetic. It shows that infinity is more about quality than quantity, and it opens a universe of reflections far beyond arithmetic. But this subject isn't only for mathematicians or logicians. It can also be applied to how we view our own lives. Often, we see possibilities as finite and strictly limited. Yet within every choice, there are infinite variations waiting to unfold. A single yes can branch into millions of possible futures, and a no can open another field with endless consequences. Infinity, then, is not just a distant idea, but a daily experience. Mathematics reminds us there's always room for one more step. There is always something between what we've already seen and what can still emerge. Infinity is therefore less a distance and more a logic. And that very logic lays the groundwork for discussing the cosmic horizon. The observable universe has a boundary known as the cosmic horizon. It lies about 46 billion light-years away in every direction. But that doesn't mean space ends there like a rigid wall. That limit marks only how far light has managed to reach us. In other words, it's the maximum radius of information we can receive. The universe may well continue beyond, but it's outside our current view. It's like being on a boat in the middle of a vast ocean. The horizon isn't the end of the sea, just the edge of your sight. Science shows that what's invisible is not the same as non-existent. That perspective reshapes how we understand reality, and it invites us to rethink the limits we believe are insurmountable. The ocean analogy helps bring this closer to everyday life. When we sail in a boat, we always see a fixed horizon. No matter how far we move forward, the horizon keeps receding. There is never a physical edge where the sea truly ends. The limitation lies in our eyes, not in the ocean itself. In the same way, our observation of the universe is restricted. We see only what light has had time to travel and reach us, but space may stretch far beyond that apparent frontier. What we can't yet see may still be there, waiting to be revealed. This reminds us that knowledge is always about widening horizons. We never reach the end. We simply unlock new layers of vision. And this also works as a metaphor for personal horizons. How many times have we believed we'd reached the limit of possibility, when in truth, it was only the edge of our current perception? Our horizons shift as we take steps forward. What once seemed unreachable becomes visible at the right time. Like the cosmos, our lives hold hidden parts still waiting to emerge, experiences, connections, and opportunities awaiting their moment. Often, a limit is just the edge of what we've already seen. There will always be something more waiting as we draw closer. The cosmic horizon shows us that the unknown is not the end, and that opens the way for us to reflect on the origin of time itself. When we hear Big Bang, many picture a massive explosion. But it wasn't something that happened inside an already existing space. Space-time itself began at that mysterious initial instant. There wasn't an empty stage waiting for expansion to unfold. Time was born together with matter, energy, and space. Asking what was before is like searching for north of the North Pole. The concept loses meaning because there is no before time. It's hard to accept, since our minds always think in chronology. We're used to causes preceding effects on a ticking clock, but the Big Bang shows even time has an internal origin, and that origin defies our everyday logic of beginnings and ends. A helpful analogy is to picture a globe with its poles. We can travel north until we reach the North Pole and then stop. Asking what lies farther north is a question with no answer. Time works in a similar way with respect to the Big Bang. There is no before because time itself began right there. Modern physics shows that space and time are inseparable. Neither exists without the other. They form the fabric of the universe. At the initial instant, that fabric came into being and began to expand. It's as if both the stage and the play were born together, with no backstage. The Big Bang was not an explosion, but a simultaneous emergence. And that idea reshapes the very way we think about existence. This understanding also works as a reflection for life. So often we ask what caused our pain, or we search for a before in our personal stories to find blame. But some beginnings don't have a clear past to investigate. They are starting points that simply mark the birth of something new. Like the Big Bang, some restarts are the birth of time itself. The value is not in asking what came before, but what comes after. What will you build from the moment you begin? Science shows us that even time can emerge from nothing, and this invites us to rethink the very limits of the possible and the real, which opens the door to a final reflection that ties everything together. If the universe can expand without needing borders, why do you still believe your life must have fixed limits? How many dreams have you left behind because it felt like an invisible wall stood in front of you? The cosmos shows us that the unknown isn't the end. It's the beginning of new possibilities. And perhaps the greatest lesson is realizing that, just like space, you can also grow without breaking walls. You only need to allow yourself to move forward, one step at a time. So let me ask you, what horizons have you placed upon your own life? What would you do if you discovered they don't actually exist, that everything that once seemed unreachable was simply just beyond your current line of sight? Would you have the courage to expand your own existence, even without knowing what lies beyond the curve? These questions have no ready-made answers, but within them lies the power to transform how you choose to live from this moment on. If this video sparked reflection in you, don't let the expansion stop here. Write in the comments which limit you've realized you no longer need to obey. Share this content with someone who also needs to see that there's more beyond the horizon they thought was the end. And of course, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because this cosmic journey of discovery is only just beginning, and you won't want to miss the steps ahead.